right, everyone. Hello and welcome in on this wonderful Monday. Thank you for joining us as we continue the grind of talking Minnesota Vikings football here on Ohio. This past weekend, the Minnesota Vikings and fans alike got to experience something that we don't want to experience again, and we didn't enjoy experiencing what we went through over the weekend. Also today, I'm going to talk about a very sensitive topic that I don't want to talk about. I've been ignoring it. You may remember the Rick Dennison story last week, and I could have done a video about that and had a discussion then and there, but I chose to ignore it because it didn't seem that important at the time. I actually ended up winning because it sorted itself out, and now it's not really a thing. But this weekend was a thing. We now have to discuss the elephant in the room and the disaster that is potentially looming for the Minnesota Vikings in 2021. Just when you think this team was on the right trajectory, they find newer and more impressive ways to give us heart palpitations. And I believe that we are going to be walking a fine line for the entire regular season this year, unless something changes, which it doesn't look like it's going to. And we have a very upset coach, which I empathize with him. And we need to just, rip off the Band-Aid and have this serious discussion about what's potentially brewing. So we're going to get to that. But before we hit that, head on with a full head of steam, let's talk about the unsung hero, the bright shining star under the lights for Saturday night. And that was quarterback Jake Browning. So Jake Browning, we've had some discussions about him on this channel. We did an entire video on him a few weeks ago. We talked about how he is one of the front runners to win the backup job behind Kirk Cousins for this season. The contest really comes down between Jake Browning and Kellen Mond, the third-round draft pick out of Texas A&M this past draft. Not really convinced that Nate Stanley has a leg in this race, or a horse in this race, however that metaphor works. I think Nate Stanley is destined for the practice squad. He's also just another body to be available during training camp so that they can evenly distribute throws between the quarterbacks so they're not completely ruining one guy's arm. And that actually kind of leads to some of the waiver wire and transactional activity for the past 48 hours for the Minnesota Vikings as they bring in a couple quarterbacks off the streets. They brought in Case Cookus, who is a real person that I didn't know existed until yesterday. Danny Eitling, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, was claimed off waivers, former Seattle Seahawks quarterback. And there's also been reports that Clint Kubiak himself and their quarterbacks coach are going to be made available to throw passes during practice. We're getting into 5-a-days territory here until the preseason. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of quarterback status because Kirk Cousins, Kellen Mond, and Nate Stanley are currently unavailable. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's finish talking about Jake Browning. Just sort of, paint the picture for you. So Jake Browning comes in with an opportunity to impress, to better give himself a leg up at the competition to win the quarterback 2 job. And, he took advantage of it. I think it was a very good performance. Now, he himself was pretty humble afterwards, talking to the media, saying, quote, it was a pretty average practice in his mind, and he felt that he's had better practices before. Listen, that may be true, but you did this one with all eyes on you, and the pressure was probably jacked up to 11, and you did a very good job. So I think Jake Browning is really, now the front runner officially to win the backup quarterback job behind Kirk Cousins this year. And he also had a leg up early on, as we've discussed, because of how he was doing in OTAs and minicamp. He's the most experienced quarterback on this roster, not named Kirk Cousins, because Nate Stanley was drafted last year. Kellen Mond is the rookie this year. So all roads point to Jake Browning being the backup quarterback, especially because it seems for some weird reason recently with the Minnesota Vikings, and especially under Mike Zimmer, that they are very hesitant to get rookies involved early on in their careers or even early on in a season. We saw that last year with Jeff Gladney not starting right away. We saw that with Justin Jefferson, who didn't break out until I believe it was week 3 against Tennessee. Maybe it was week 4, I forget. Semantics. And then we're seeing that this year. They're kind of slow walking Wyatt Davis. Christian Darrisaw is a different story. He's recovering from core surgery in the offseason. So every situation is different, but, collectively, more often than not, it looks like rookies are kind of on the slow path to getting involved on the team and on the field. So Jake Browning, very excited to see how he takes this weekend, which was a big W for him, and runs with it. Of course, we've still got the preseason to sort things out as far as, backup quarterback goes. But right now, I would say Browning's definitely the favorite, and I'm okay with that. I would be pretty confident with that. Let's not rule out them signing a veteran once cuts happen, because players are going to get cut We might see, veteran quarterbacks hit the free agent market. I don't want to sign Blake Bortles, but it just might be a thing that happens. I'm just throwing a name out there. All right, so that's the fun part of the video. Now we get to talk about the part that I don't want to talk about, and it's probably going to make people upset, and I'm going to inject my opinion. So just warning, if you don't want to deal with that, click away and then come back tomorrow. So the situation goes that Kellen Mond tested positive, and Kirk Cousins and Nate Stanley were listed as close contacts. So under the new NFL protocol rules, unvaccinated close contact players must quarantine for 5 days. Now, this happened, I believe, Friday or Saturday. Either way, it makes him unavailable for the entire weekend. So let's go to Fantasyland, and let's pretend that this happens, the exact situation happens, week 7, whatever it is. Pick any week. It doesn't matter. It's a disaster. Kirk Cousins would be unavailable to start for the Minnesota Vikings, whether it be a Sunday night game or a Monday night game. The only way that this doesn't affect us is if it happens to be a Thursday night game, because it would happen afterwards, and we'd have that long resting slate between the next game, where it probably wouldn't impact anything as far as the starting roster goes. But this was a real life scenario, a real world fire drill, tornado drill, whatever you want to call it, where Mike Zimmer once again gets to experience what it's like to have leaders in the locker room who are not vaccinated. And I understand that they can't force him to do that, and that's fine. It's just disappointing. I empathize with Mike Zimmer so much, who has been very upsetty spaghetti this weekend. If you have watched any of his media interviews or any of his sessions where he's available to take questions, he's not mincing words, and he's not directly calling people out, and he's not naming names, but he knows who he's speaking to, and the people that he is speaking to know that they're being spoken to. We're not really dancing around anything that's secret anymore. Now that, before we kind of just assume, right? Because you don't want to answer a question. You're like, oh, it's a HIPAA violation, even though I have no idea how it works. We're just kind of assuming you're giving that answer. It means you're not vaccinated. Same thing that I thought when I heard the Carson Wentz say it. Same thing when I heard Dak Prescott say it. Your mind goes to a certain place. There's no secrets no more. We know. Cat's out of the bag. There's no more hiding it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Kirk Cousins gets in front of reporters the next time that he's available, which I imagine will be post-quarantine, or if the team is probably going to keep him away from that. I want to applaud the Minnesota Vikings social media team for putting up the Mike Zimmer videos where he is talking about how frustrating it is to have players unvaccinated that put them in this situation, and how they could absolutely put this to bed by just having a 100% vaccination rate amongst the players and coaching staff. And I empathize with that, because we're going to find ourselves in a situation, I guarantee it, unless things change, where certain players are going to miss games. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. It's so easy for it to happen. And we saw it last year. I don't want to end up in a situation like the Denver Broncos, where they are putting out a wide receiver from the practice squad who played college quarterback years ago. We're direct snapping to Dalvin Cook for the entire game, or we have, God forbid, I don't even know who the emergency quarterback is in this situation, because I think it was supposed to be Kyle Rudolph last year. I don't know. But anyway, long story short, this is not good. This is not what we need. This is just another media, I don't want to say media distraction, but it causes a media distraction, because this is what we have to talk about now, and we can't talk about football. And it's become a football topic, it's just come full circle, because now we're faced with the threat of possibly having Jake Browning, have a number of starts this season that is greater than 1, and that is unacceptable. Especially for the amount of money that Kirk Cousins makes. My God. So that's the situation. I realize people are going to say in the comments is just going to be a shit show. But it is what it is, and that's fine. But listen, as far as this goes, like, nobody's forcing him. I understand they're going to say things like it's a personal choice and all those things. Then whatever. I don't want to hear it no more. I don't care about your politics. I don't care about what you think about vaccines and about the government controlling you and all this sheep shit. I don't care. I legitimately don't care. I've had enough of it. It's been a year and a half of this just nonsense, and it's time for it to stop. It really is. So if you want to have a serious, conversation about it, and this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, you just shut down and don't listen to people who disagree with you. No, we can have disagreements. We can have disagreements about who's the better quarterback for Team X. We can have disagreements about how many times we should run versus pass. We can have disagreements about whether or not Breaking Bad is the best TV show in the history of television. We can have disagreements about pepperoni pizza or pineapple on pizza. Those are things to have disagreements about. This is not one of them. I don't want to. I don't care. I don't care about anti-vax nonsense. It's just the dumbest thing that we have to deal with right now, and it's the only reason that we're still in this situation. If you're a Cole Beasley fan, I don't care. I legitimately don't care. If you want to have a serious, honest discussion about it and how this affects the Minnesota Vikings winning a Super Bowl in 2021, because that's something we didn't even really touch on, is the possibility of this happening in the playoffs. Can you imagine that? And then I remember back to what was that season that we had where we had to go to Green Bay and Christian Ponder was unavailable because of an injury. We're all like, okay, Joe Webb, let's go. And it's a complete disaster. And at, halfway through, we're like, oh my, okay, so maybe Christian Ponder wasn't that bad, maybe just for this game. I don't want to experience that. I like Jake Browning. I think he could be a good backup quarterback, maybe a one-spot start or, finish half a game. God forbid if something happens injury-wise. But Kirk Cousins needs to be available. Adam Thielen needs to be available. And Harrison Smith needs to be available. And it disappoints me to no end that Harrison Smith is part of this discussion because he's been one of my favorite players since he's been drafted, since, the entire Mike Zimmer era. So it sucks. This is the conversation we don't want to talk about, but this is now a football problem, as we have seen over the past weekend with Kirk Cousins and 3/4 of the quarterback room not being available. It's too risky. It's too risky for this to happen, and I hope Mike Zimmer comes to the reality that he's not going to be able to change their minds, and he is going to take Jake Browning or Kellen Mond or a different veteran quarterback, and he is going to quarantine that guy, similar to how one of the teams did last year. I believe the Buffalo Bills had a quarterback who was just not allowed to be near anybody. He was the de facto emergency. You're going to start if everything else goes to shit. I hope that he comes up with that plan because we're going to need it. So that's going to do it for this video. We'll definitely be talking about this again because there's going to be, fallout from this, absolutely. And Mike Zimmer continues to be frustrated, and I don't blame him. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Be reasonable about it. Be reasonable about it. I'm willing to listen to different ideas, but I'm not willing to listen to different ideas that are, just garbage, just nonsense that you pull it off of screamingeaglefreedomroar.com. I don't care. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.